Okay, everybody say. Oh, actually, let's start this. One second, I have a problem, guys. You guys see me? Do you see me? Yeah, by me it stopped though. I'm not sure if they see me. You see me? No, they don't see me. 1 minute. Sorry, guys. One second, guys. You see me now? Sorry, everybody. I'll close it. We'll just take it off the Zoom. It's causing too much trouble. I don't know what happened over here. Should get it now. No. Should get it now. Got it. Okay. That was not easy. I'm sorry, everybody. Say. I don't know what happened. Stomach. Hopefully, you know what? But now it's on, right? Everybody's good? Now we're good. Yeah? Danny, you're good? Yeah, okay, I say. So, obviously, Kamuvan, the Shia should be the schus that Trump should win the election. That's goes without saying. It goes without saying that Stama Biden was the reason why that all blame everything. Okay, so Maisa the Mishnah Berurah. You have to make up for those last few minutes that I start late. So hopefully with the content and the quality, hopefully we'll be able to make up. This Mishnah Berurah troubles us all. This Mishnah Berurah is very difficult. Let's try to explain Mishnah Berurah with all the nafkaminas now. I think it's nicer now. I think it's somewhat clear. It's somewhat clear. Mishnah Berurah over here in Sivkat and Yud, you're trying to figure out what does it mean, a kli shumlachta li'isser. What's a kli shumlachta li'isser? Dainu, kli, we're going to, Mr. Shem, talk about, but what is malachtai? What's malachtai? What does it mean? Obviously, isser, it has to have some form of isser, which we have to talk about. It's related to isser, it affects an isser, it causes an isser, it enables an isser. But what's malachtai? Does it mean that you can have an item? What's the din of a Swiss Army knife? It has in it, a scissor, and it has in it like a pen knife, I think it is, right? Is that a kli shumlachta leheter and isser? If something is going to be a kli shumlachta leheter and isser, so Mishnah Berurah and Sivkat and Chaf, he tells us that has a din of a kli shumlachta leheter. That's considered something which is mutter. It'll have the status that you'll be able to move it, even to save the item itself, and not just let's say guf mekaymai. That's a kli shumlachta leheter. What's the din of a pen knife? What's the din of a car? There's a lot of things that go on in a car. What's the din of a gun? What's the din of a gun? We have to figure out. Is that a kli shumlachta li'isser v'cheina v'cheina? But what we were discussing yesterday is a pot. What's the din of a pot? What's the difference of a pot? What's the din of a pot in the Etavshin Pei Aleph? Everything that you're hearing and much more is based on the Havan and the Pashup Shad in this Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah, so you've cut Yud. Let's go again. And now hopefully I think I myself am a little bit more clear. And Mitzvah Shem, I'll be able to clarify for everybody. Mishnah Berurah and Sivkat and Yud, Mishnah Berurah says, what does it mean malachta li'isser? Kloimar. Kloimar says in Mishnah Berurah, miuchedes ledavar she'isser la'asais b'Shabbos. This is the key words in the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is saying over here that if something is miyuchad for isser, if that's what it's yud is for, miyuchad, like you learned in the Gemara in Kedushin, miyuchad means it's specially oimid for that purpose. If it's oimid for the purpose of doing isser, that's called the kli shumlachta li'isser. The problem in the Mishnah Berurah tzugad, like he adds these words, he says, vafilu emrak, roiv malachta li'isser. Mishnah Berurah says, that's only, even if only roiv of its malachas for isser, that's also included. That's also included. I think, we'll see in a moment, I think the mistake of how I read the Mishnah Berurah yesterday, which caused a lot of the trouble, is I'm not convinced that this sentence is one sentence. In other words, yesterday when we read it as one sentence, that it's the hesber of the first part. What does it mean? Something that's miyuchad ledavar iser, says the Mishnah Berurah, that something that's miyuchad for iser is based on roiv. So then that created a lot of trouble. In other words, what the Mishnah Berurah would be saying was that how do you figure out what's called miyuchad for iser? Says the Mishnah Berurah, if it has roiv usages of that item, 51% of that item is used to do iser, so then that's called miyuchad for iser. I'm not convinced that's the pshat, and we'll see that if you don't learn like that, it's going to be much easier to call apachas. It could be there's two separate statements in this Mishnah Berurah. It could be what the Mishnah Berurah is saying over here is number one, and this is the first and foremost. So the Mishnah Berurah, if you have something which, now again, I'm going to, clarify and be malab in this statement as we go along. So don't yet at this point, don't be kaveh the masmerim of the halacha based on the statement, but let's just use it as a mashal. Let's say a person wants to know, what is the reason why he bought that item? The reason why he bought that item, let's say he buys a hammer. What's the reason why he buys a hammer? Each person, you have to ask each person on his own. But if you ask this person, what's the reason why he bought the hammer? He says, the reason I bought the hammer for shteitzach is for nails. That's why I have it. That's what it's miyuchad for. That's what it's oimid for. If that's the case, says the Mishnah Berurah, in that case, we don't start looking and trying to figure out how many times do you use it to knock in nails and how many times do you use it to pry open a window, which would be mutter on Shabbos. We don't look at it like that. This thing was bought for that purpose. If it wouldn't be able to knock in nails, would I still want to have such a hammer? That's how you have to be kaveya. If it wouldn't be able to knock in the nails, would I consider it to be, a broken hammer? That's how you have to be kaveya. The first thing it says in Mishabura is Kaloimar, it's miyuchad to do a davar iser and Shabbos. As I go along, I'm going to explain this more and more. But that's number one. And that's not based on Raif. That won't be based on Raif. You can have an unbelievable phenomenon. It could be, let's say you have something that the reason why I buy that item is in order to do an iser. And you know what? But 90% of the time, punktloch, I don't use it for iser. I use it for heter. Let's say you have some item that, let's say a hammer. I keep on talking about hammer because that's the easy case. When we go into the actual cases, it'll become clear. But let's say you buy a hammer. Why did you buy a hammer? You bought a hammer in order to knock in the nails, like everybody. If I think there was like a niggin once. If I had a hammer, it was like some kind of a niggin or something. So what's the obvious the implication of the whole niggin is that the reason why he has a hammer is to do isurim. That's clear. Punkt. This guy, when he bought the hammer on day one, he took it into his room, into his office where he learns and whatever, and the papers were flying. That's Maisa. This is the Maisa Shahaya today. I took down my sukkah a couple of days ago. So the hammer was on the table. I don't need a hammer to take down the sukkah, but that's what happened. I don't know why. But there was a hammer on the table. And today the papers are flying everywhere, right? So I took the hammer and I put it on the papers. So the papers shouldn't fly everywhere. We don't know what's going to be our Pesach. It could be that hammer will be there for the next, until Pesach. We don't know. That's how it goes sometimes in people's houses, right? Now, that means 99.999% of the usage of this hammer is going to be a paper holder. Is that a davar shel iser? Of course, it's not a davar shel iser. Is that a shima shel heter? Of course, it's a shima shel heter. I use the hammer 99.9% of the time over the course of the next 6 months. It might hold down paper. Is that called the kli shemlach iser on Shabbos? L'chayra. Lefi this Mishnah Berurah l'chayra. Why? Because I ask you, what is the hammer? A hammer is something that's lashon in Mishnah Berurah, miyuchad the davar she'asur lasas b'Shabbos. That's what it's miyuchad for. It's punklach. I might use it 99.9% of the time, not like that. The confusion I had yesterday I read the Mishnah Berurah as one sentence. One sentence. I'm not sure if this is one sentence. The Mishnah Berurah goes on and he says another t'nai in how you could be a malachta the iser. If you read it like this, Rabbi say, so then everything falls into place. Now comes along the Mishnah Berurah and he says, not everything is clear what it's miyuchad for. Some things you have, they're not clear what they're miyuchad for. It's not, a hammer, let's say, is clear. Sometimes you can have something like a scissor. A scissor is not clear. A scissor is oimit to cut. A scissor is oimit to cut. It cuts things that are mutter, it cuts things that are aser. And let's say in this case, don't say, wait, well, my scissors only for paper, my scissors only for hair. I'm saying, but let's say Tak has a scissor. And by him, the pshat is a scissor, he uses it Tak in the kitchen. Half the time he uses it for cutting Tvarim asurim, but cutting things that are mutter, cutting things that are aser, right? So it's, it's not clear to him what it is. I can't say it's miyuchad for is. I can't say it's miyuchad for heter. I can't say. And that comes along the Mishnah Berurah, and now he gives a new t'nai. How are you going to figure out if she's a kli shemlach yes or not? Says the Mishnah Berurah. Here you have to go after roiv. Now, if you have something where it's not clear what the yichud is, the more normal examples I'll get to in a moment. Right now, these are just mishalim. But the kapanim has a scissor. I don't know. I bought the scissor because scissor is something that cuts, right? I bought a lot of times a person has like some type of a razor blade or something. He's used it for dvarim that are mutter. He could use it for dvarim that are so. Again, each case on your own, you could decide what your house has. It could be a hammer in your house, right? But let's say you ask this person, why did you buy the scissor? He says, I bought the scissor to cut things that are mutter, things that are aser, right? If it would only cut things that are mutter, he would say, is it broken? I'd say, it's not broken, but it's a shad. I wanted it to do everything. Right? I wanted to do everything. So what is this? Is this a kli shemlach yisr or is she not a kli shemlach yisr? After Zak the Mishnah Berurah, now we could look at roiv. Now we could look at the 51 percentile because that's like a klal in kol kula. Whenever you don't know what the status of an item is, the hainu say it's stronger. In the first case, I know what the status is. Of course, I know what the status is. It's miyuchad for iser. It's oimid to do iser. So then I know what its status is. Its status is to do iser. Mashen came when I don't know what its status is, now I have to figure out based on roiv. That's first of all the pshat in the Mishnah Berurah and Sivkot in Yud. Now let's continue. Zok the Mishnah Berurah. That's the reason I hope I'm going faster because everybody yesterday heard what we said yesterday with all the questions. Now the Mishnah Berurah in Shartzin, he says, go and look, and this is all muchach. This is all muchach from what it says l'gabe a pat. This is all muchach what it says l'gabe a pat. Ayin sham, and then ayin in the bir alacha. Okay, Now, the Maisa, when you look at the Derech Chaim, it's a little bit difficult it's difficult, the Mishabura and Sham, what he wants from Derech Chaim, but at least in the Bir Halacha, he's a little bit more elaborate. In the Bir Halacha, he has the Shaila, that the Kaza Prima Gadem, the Klisha Roif Malach Eliezer is also Klisha Malach Eliezer. Mishabura, even in the Minei Bay in the Mishabura, it's a little bit difficult to read. He says, you should know, this is what gave it away, Rabbi Say. You should know, a Klisha Roif Malach Eliezer is also a Malach Eliezer. What? What do you mean? A kli that 51% of the usages is for Isser, that's also Malach Isser. What? What do you mean? That's the understanding of Malach Isser, 51%. This is where you see what the Mishabura is teaching us in the first Mishabura. This is the Mishabura told us, go and look in that Bir Halacha. The Halacha said, if you have something which is miyuchad l'malachta li'isser, something which anybody looks at this and says, what's this? Why did you buy this? I bought it to do isser. Of course that's malachta li'isser. Now I don't care 51%, 93%, 98%, 2%, I don't care. Comes along the Bir Halacha, the Mishabura, with another chiddush. You should know something that it's not miyuchad for isser. But 51% of the time I do Isser with it, that is also a Malachta Eliezer. That's a Chiddush. That's a Chiddush. Now read the Bir Halacha. It's wonderful. So the Bir Halacha, you should know a Klisha Roiv Malachta Eliezer is also Malachta Eliezer. And he brings a Raya from Kedera. So he says, what's the Raya? He understood, this is what the Bir Halacha is bringing the Prima Gadim, that the Prima Gadim understood that a pot was something that's not clear. What is it? Is it miyuchad for Isser? Is it not miyuchad for Isser? Says the Prima Gadim. I'll tell you the answer. I don't know, but 51% of the time I use a pot to do Isser. That's what the Bir Halacha brings from the Prima Gadim. So he says, so that's how I got this klal. That's where the klal of the Mishabura comes from. And that comes again the Mishabura. He says, you should know, I agree with the klal. I agree with the klal, but I don't agree with the raya. I don't agree with the raya. And Mamela, something here is going to change. It says there, wait a minute, that's only an ikr, he rakla melechas isser. V'rakla fomim mishtamish balaheter. Says the Bir Halacha Maridik Side here. He says, let's say I have something, like we just spoke about. I have something like a pot. The Bir Halacha, we'll see why in a moment. But he took on a pot is miyuchid for isser. It's oymid for isser. That's the function of a pot, is to do isser. When you buy a pot, what's the reason you buy a pot? Is to cook. So that's why it's miyuchad for Esser. We'll see in a minute my kashas in a pot, but Al Kapanim, it's certainly that when you buy a pot, you buy it with that, at least in Radenshtetl, circa 1880, 1890. When you bought a pot, you had one question: is this thing going to be able to cook the food? Okay, get to Shem. We'll see about halacha l'maisa. But on that side, the halacha, so that's ikr for the purpose of Isser. So the halacha, dafkem ikr laklam lechas Isser. That's what it's aimed for. The fam mishtamish l'bdar heter. Okay. I can bring a raya from a pot. That's the raya. That's the only raya I have from pot. The raya I have from a pot is something which is clearly oymid for isser. He says, "Avalim derech hakli lishtamish b'l'shneim." He says, but what if I have something which isn't miyuchid? It's not miyuchid, and not only that, he doesn't say that it's just not miyuchid. It's derech for both. Rak shel isser mishtamshim b'yoser. But this one is 51%. So he says, "Minol and demikatzadaite." How do you know if something is 51% and the other thing is 49%? So how do you know that it's mekatze daite and that he considers this to be a malachta li'eser? Why? Because it's 49%. All right, so if I do use it 49%. In other words, the Mishabura is saying when something is miyuchid, then there's nothing to discuss. Okay? But says the Mishabura, what I'm understanding here is that what happens if you have something which is not miyuchid and it's 51% and 49%? 51%. So he says, so why should I go after Raif? Why should I go after Raif? On that says the Mishabura, he says, Halo yasuya l'melechas heter gamkein. It's also made from melechas heter v'tzarchian. Not kind of Mishabura. Now you go back to the Mishabura, you got a big problem. Mishabura says, so now we know one thing is for sure about the Mishabura. How do we figure out things? We figure out based on what you're miyuchid for. Okay, but the Mishabura in Sefer Mishabura Paskins Vafilu and Rak Roiv Malachta Li'eser is also even Roiv, even when something is Roiv usage, it's 51%. That's also enough to a kaveya, even if you're not miyuchid. Okay, in the Bir Halacha, it sounds like he's saying, I don't know how you know that. V'tzarchian. So the Bir Halacha Taka very much sounds like he's saying Sarchian, but he wants to tell you that the Maisa you should know what's my psak halacha. My psak halacha is that we are going to look at Roiv when it's not clear. That's what we would have said if we just had everything in front of us. Just a moment. But in Sivkat and Chav, Mishabura gives the final hashlama. Hu adinim ayamalachta le'isr v'leheter. Now the Mishnah Berurah talks about something which is miyuchad for both. The miyuchad for both. When something is miyuchad for both, gam kein loy mekatse daite minei. So now you have three things. And hopefully with this, now everything hopefully will be clear. You have three different things over here. You have like this. You have number one, you have something that's miyuchad. Okay? And that's what we're going to try to talk about now. Then you have number two, something that it's really not clear why. It's really not clear what this thing is. It's not miyuchad for anything. And now you can really have to figure it out based on 51%. That's Sif Yod. Sif Chaf is something interesting. It's, let's say you have something, Mishnah Berurah says, it's miyuchad for both. It's miyuchad for both. It says, we'll see from the examples what fits into these three categories. On that, the Mishnah Berurah is not willing to be mevater. I bought it mefurish for both. Let's see. Hopefully from the examples it'll come clear. The Maisa, I'll go, I guess, one by one. The first case obviously is the pot. He buys a pot, right? Now, let's go back to the year 1880. In the year 1880, why did somebody buy a pot? You did not store a pot in the fridge. You didn't store a pot in the fridge because there was no fridge, right? It's true you would leave the food in the pot, maybe the most overnight, etc. And the goal was, just enough time that, because also you have to remember things went off and etc. Right? I could understand that the Bir Lacha, even though the Chayyadam learns not like this, Chayyadam that the Mishnah Berurah had open on the table in Kallus Samech Vav and Tiv Gimel, the Mishnah Berurah goes not like the Chayyadam, and he says a pot in the time of him, in the time of Radin, is considered a Kli Shemach L'Yeser. There's no tzad not. Why? Because he understood what's the purpose of a pot. The purpose of a pot is certainly to cook. You're going to leave the stuff inside of it. So the Bir Lacha, again, either I'll tell you that the pshat is in those days they didn't leave things inside the pot, or it was a very, very, not common usage. It could be also their pots were very meistic. We're going to see the place can talk about it. Their pots were quite dreadful, and they smelled and whatever. They had all types of bugs and farm animals and creatures that walked around their houses and stuff. And it's very possible. We have no reason to believe that they actually did leave things inside the pot. And that type of pot, we all agree, is, I'll give you an example of that pot in the Hainti Gedor. I have two pots. One is a frying pan, like I said yesterday. That pot, all you do in it is you cook. That's for sure, Kli Shemach L'Yeser. Right? I have another pot, which maybe you can, when you hear this example, you can start to appreciate the Mishnah Berurah, the chicken soup pot. The big chicken soup pot that you put in there, like the full chicken, the whole, like three of them, the big chicken, right? Nobody stores that in the fridge. And then nobody stores in the fridge because sorry, right? Most people, normal people don't store it in the fridge because it's not user friendly. I don't mean you're not normal. I'm saying, but usually what you do is like this: you make the huge chicken soup, and then after you put it inside like little Tupperwares, Tupperware, right? Tupperware. You put it inside Tupperware, and then you freeze it, whatever. It's not the norm to take a chicken soup pot and to store it and keep it in the chicken soup. It's true. By default, you might leave it there overnight, and you might the first day of the chicken soup, it might wind up in the fridge, and then it might accidentally wind up there, but it's not so friendly. It's not user-friendly. It's not practical. Sorry? No, I mean the big pot. No, I mean that some people... Wait one second. I'm talking about... Maybe we're not talking about the same thing. Wait, no, I'm talking the same. When the family grows, and you have you have to, I mean like you make a pot like this big. I'm saying a pot like this big. So Friday night, you don't eat all that. It's not again. So what you do is you take some, you pour it into a smaller pot, and then you take a bunch of little ware tuppers and you put them in there, and then you freeze it. That's how it goes, right? Nobody knows what I'm talking about. I'm the only one. This is what my wife does. Am I being Megala in public? My Rabbi Sher, you don't do? You don't eat chicken soup? You don't eat chicken soup. So what's the right? What goes in the fridge? But I don't understand. That pot you need for the next 4 Shabbos, sometimes you make the chicken soup. I'm talking about that. I'm talking about that type of pot. Rabbi Salty, you with me or no? Are you with me or against me? You're with me. You're with me. You're against me. What? You're with me. Okay. No. Is there anybody who's with me or not? You know what I'm talking about, no? Is it an Israeli thing? Did I become Israeli? I don't even know. What? I become Israeli? I don't understand. There's enough chicken soup in there to you can fill up a mikveh. Maybe. What are you talking about? That chicken soup, the big one, it's this big. That's only after Shabbos. What? I'm talking about the person. Rabbi Schlüsselfeld, are you with me or not? No? Is that who's there? Tuvi, you with me? Tuvi's with me. What? Rabbi Heinrich said, okay, I think most people, Rabbi Sai, it seems like most people that are on the TV screen agree with me. They agree with me. And the people we know that they watch TV, they're the ones that are kaveya, and that's how it goes. That's how it goes. Most people are with, frankly, with me or not with me? You know what I'm talking about. What are you talking about, these people? Not normal, no? I'm talking about that case. That case, Rabbi Sai, that case is nostalgically reminiscent of Radenshtetl. That was a pot that was huge. You know, Mamela stored it. It wasn't something normal that you stored it, but it could wind up in the fridge and whatever. You know, it's not like a frying pan that you just cook it and then wash it afterward. You know, it's only used for cooking. I'm asking. It could be they maybe stored it a little bit by accident. It wasn't so common. Only if you had a little bit left, etc., etc. Rabbi said, that's lemaisa. That's lemaisa. What the Mishabura calls miyuchedet for eser l'daiti. That big chicken soup. It's not so practical the case because, you know, if there's food in it, it's going to be mutter anyways. Because when there's food in it, it's bottled to the food, like we keep on saying. Mishabura says in Sivkot and Chav, Mishabura says in Sivkot and Chavav, and then you can move around. What's the case? The case will be sometimes you have that huge chicken soup pot, and it's like smack in the middle. So then, anyways, it's going to be mutter to move it. It's a tzarech mekayma. You need to mark him, right? But let's say the pshat is that it's not bothering anybody. It's on the kitchen table. It's on the kitchen table. You just don't like the way she looks. You don't like the way she looks. She's right there in the middle of the kitchen table. I'd rather have their flowers. I'd rather have their, you know, something else, but not this huge chicken soup in the middle of the kitchen table. Nobody's eating there, let's say. So it's not a place where you need to mark him. It's just like ruining a little bit the ambiance. So that will be the nafkamina. You can't move her. You can't move her. We're going to talk about Tzarech Mekayma in Mitzvah more. Let's assume Ramosha has that case, and he says that's not called Tzarech Mekayma. But let's go with that. That's where the Chai Adam is possibly arguing. I don't even know. It could be the Chai Adam would say, no, I agree in that case. If you have a pot, which is taka like that, maybe the Chai Adam's pot, he used to put inside there fruits and vegetables and all types of things. I don't know. But those two cases I'm going to put on the side. Then, just give me one moment. Then I'm going to put another two cases on the side. Let's say you have glassware like Pyrex and like Duralex and all the Lex stuff. You know, I'm talking about all the glassware, right, that you make inside there. You make a potato kugel. And then what do you do after you make the potato kugel in there? You serve it inside that thing. Tainu, let's go back to our question. When I buy this, why am I buying her? Am I buying her just to cook the food? Or am I buying her to also serve? It's no question in the world. You're clearly buying it also to serve. As a matter of fact, you know, technically, it could be you're not going to wind up doing this because just, you know, that's what goes on. But let's say you made the potato kugel in a disposable silver pan, and you want to be able to serve the potato kugel, right? You don't want to bring it out in a silver pan. You know, if it's just your family, you don't care. But when it's not, so you do care. So now you bring it out, you'll put it maybe in the glassware. It's something that theoretically you could do. It wouldn't be strange, and you buy it for that reason. That with l'chayra would fit into Mishnah Berurah Sivkot in Chav. Why did I buy her? Why did I buy her? I bought her also to serve, and I bought her also to cook, that it should be cooking friendly. You're right. Somebody's going to start saying, maybe I bought it more for this than for that. But that'll be a good example. I could read the Mishnah Berurah, who adin in my malachto li'isser, vilaheter, gam kein loy mekatze daiti minei. Okay, that's the case of, those cases we'll put on the side. I think everyone agrees those two cases. A regular pot in the year Tavshin Pei Aleph, Manoimar, Manadaber, I never like saying that the Mishnah, we're not Chalila, that's not even an option. I mean, we're not saying that we disagree with the Mishnah Berurah, and we're not paskening like the Chai Adam against the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is the Paisik Achron. And the Mishnah Berurah had the Chai Adam open on the table, and he paskened not like the Chai Adam, so it would be ludicrous. So one sefer, he says, yeah, you could go like the Chai Adam. Could you even write such a thing? Aren't you embarrassed to write such a thing? You have to be embarrassed to write such a thing, no? I mean, there's some things that you write, and some things you think, and there's some things you write. You don't write things like that. How could you write that? Shabura the Chai Adam open. No, he actually writes it, and you're like an intelligent person. He writes. We paskin like the Chai Adam, not like the Mishnah Berurah. How can you write that? How can you write that? The Mishnah Berurah is the Paisik Achron, and the Mishnah Berurah had the Chai Adam open on the table in this beer lach. In this beer lach, he brings the Chai Adam. In this beer lach, and he says, how can he say such a thing? I don't know. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it was a Tayas Sefer in that Sefer. Maybe it's like a whole extra sentence that he didn't realize. You know, sometimes you say things out loud, you don't realize you just said it out loud, and the person heard you. You should never do that with your wife, but you know what I mean, right? So maybe he wrote it. He didn't even realize he wrote it. No, I can't believe he wrote it. But so never do we say that the pshat is not like the Mishnah Berurah when the Mishnah Berurah says I don't pass, but the Metzias has changed legamre. Metzias has pasha changed legamre, and the daiti aklusha, my Kallus das, my small das. It's almost pasha to me that a pot today is not muksa. Let's just push it to understand. I understand that you could have learned maybe the storage factor of a pot. The storage factor of a pot is something that you could say that's just a hemshich of the original usage, right? I could understand that. And I could also understand, maybe yesterday I asked a question that I saw some of the Achreinim ask, when I'm heating up the food, right? I'm heating up the food. So then when I heat up food, that's something that is, again, even though it's a davar shel heter, to heat up food on Shabbos is mutter. You're allowed to. You have a blech, you're allowed to heat up food, right? And we saw different fun, maybe if it's liquid, okay, but there's definitely, I would say 80%, 70% of what we do with the pot is dvarim mutar. It's dvarim mutar. Most of the things is storage of it, and most of the time. So to say, when I buy a pot, it's true. Let's step back. This is where it gets complicated. When you buy a pot, so I asked my wife today, when you buy a pot, what's the most important thing going from this? So she has all different cheshbonos, non-stick, and what? Well, obviously size, I'm saying, but you want to be non-stick. What goes into, why are you buying it? You're buying it to cook. What? So I asked her, does it come into cheshbon? Also she said she has a certain pot that she dafka bought because she knew it would fit in the fridge. Right? She was like a certain type of, she said then the taka doesn't cook so well, whatever. But no, it's a taka. These are cheshbonos that normal people, do we serve with the pot? Do we serve with the pots today? Come on, no, I don't mean when there's guests. I mean, when there's bachurim. Do we? No, I'm saying, do you serve with the? We serve with the pot. We serve with the pot. She said part of the cheshbon is she buys a pot that's like balabatish enough that she could also bring to the table and not feel bad about it. It's like part of the cheshbon. It's part of the cheshbon, right? The Mishnah Brura in Radenshtetl, Mrs. Brura, the great rabbits in Chai. No, I'm saying she didn't make those cheshbonos. She didn't make those cheshbonos. It's shvet to gleiben that we're not going to miss out. So Elamai, I can hear that it's, maybe you want to tell me, therefore it's miyuchat for both. You can hear, I can't be soivel, somebody saying that today, in the year Tavshin Pei Aleph, a pot is muksa, it's a davar tamua. The daiti it's tamua. L'chayra, it's a klisha malachtai le'ister veheter. Right? And the therefore it's going to be mutter to nafkamin is that pot, if you have in the middle of the table and it's just bothering you, not that you need the place, so then you're going to be allowed to move her. That's a chayra. If you're nervous to do against the Mishnah Brura, so you have to know anytime there's food inside the pot still, so then it's mutter. Once there's food inside the pot, then it's mutter. Now I want to just mention one thing. I saw in the Sefer Orach Shabbos, he says that the pot is muksa, even bisman hazeh, and he brings a raya. He says, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? You're going to say because that which you left the food inside the pot. You left inside some food, so that's considered a nushimush, which derech agav, that's not what I'm saying. That's not what I'm saying. In other words, I'm saying the reason why it's not muksa is because it's not muksa, because we also serve with it. We also, you can never look at the shimush of leaving the food inside as just, the agov, I leave it there, punklach, I punk leave it there, and it's just like a hemshich of the cooking. Hooray, we serve with it. Hooray, we reheat with it. Hooray, the serving with me is a very, very big factor. Everybody here, a mole does bring that pot to the table, and therefore, that by me is a tremendous factor. It's a tremendous factor. That shows that by you, it's not just used as this purpose, it's also used for that purpose. Just a moment. I would never take food and put it in there to serve. Okay, so what? I don't know why that's good. It's true. But who cares, right? But he goes on, he writes like it. He understood that what's the only svara. I'm going to answer questions in a moment. I just want to get through this nekuda. He understood what's the only svara why a pot today should be a klisha malachtai leheter is because you continuously use it to store the food. So he says, I'll prove to you that that's not a reason, which I'm a supik about. It could be that is also enough of a reason. I'm saying that's not my only reason. But he says that's for sure not true. The fact that you store something in there is just a hemshich of the original, and the ikar is that it's there to cook, and that's, what's his raya? Because he knows it's a chiddush. So what's the raya? And what's the raya that's storing something as a continued hemshich from the fact that you cooked with it is not called the usage. So he says, I have a raya. His raya is from the Gemara. The Gemara says, a maducha. What's a maducha? What's a maducha? A grinder. Like a grinder, or like a maducha, what? Like a teichen monster, right? So he says, over there it says, when you have garlic in the meducha, it says you have garlic in the meducha. So it says, when the maducha is an example of something which she's a klisha malachta yeser. That's what you do Isser. You grind with it. It's Isser Gomer to grind with a mortar and a pestle and other Avodah Zarah. That's also on Shabbos. You're not allowed to do that, right? But he says, but the Gemara says, and that's where Mishabur is coming from. Let's say the shum, the garlic, is still inside the grinder. It's still in there. So the halacha is, you're allowed to, we keep saying this, you're allowed to be metalto, you're allowed to carry the grinder agav the shum. Agav the shum. He says, when there's shum inside, you're allowed to carry it agav the shum. That's what he says. So he said, it's a Meridik Kasha. He says, so look, you see Mefurish, that they used to leave the shum inside the grinder. You see, they used to leave the shum inside the grinder. So you see, it was normal to store shum in the grinder. And afal pikein, the only case it's mutter is when the actual shum is in there. But Zman, the shum is not in there, so then it's not mutter to carry it. So you see, leaving something in there, as I said, tell my WhatsApp shop, because you just left it there, punked after, you went and ground it, so you left it there. But that's not called a shimush. Shimush means I do it, bekumasei, I put inside the garlic into the grinder to bedafka use it as a serving. But if you just leave it there, punklach, and you don't take it out, so then that's not called that you did a shimush. That means the shimush was the cooking, the shimush was the grinding. And boom, it's there, so I leave it there. So now, Zman that it's there, you're allowed to use it because it's bottled to the garlic. You're allowed to move around the grinder. But he says, but you see from over here, the fact that I have something in there, the fact that something was in there, that's not called a shimush, allowing us to consider this to be a kli whose function is to store things. That's his raya. That's his raya. This is Sarich in Gadol. This is Sarich in Gadol. No, should I be the one to say, or who wants to say why? Say the grinding does it itself, but now, no, Rabbi says it's mamish. It's like it's so tamua. It's mamish tamua. It's mamish tamua. I don't even know where to begin. Rabbi says when you leave in garlic, do people leave in garlic and store garlic in the grinder? I'll prove you beyond a shadow of a doubt, 1,000,000,000% not. That people don't leave from the Gemara, from Shas, from Paiskim, from everywhere. Do people leave garlic in? We're talking about people that leave cholent in a pot, in a fridge for days. That's what the whole shaila was. I had another svara that you also use it to serve. Okay? But he's saying, without that svara, if your only svara would be this isn't enough of a svara, that you store it. Why? Because you see by a garlic grinder, they store the garlic. Is there anybody in the world that stores garlic for 2 days? So first of all, the Gemara in Beis says, mefurish, that garlic is an example of a type of a food which you're allowed to chop on yontif. Why? Because the Gemara says garlic is meifik tam. Garlic is meifik tam. That means that the way the Taisa Rosh learns over there, if you have garlic in a grinder, it's going to last for mamish the amount of time that you grind it, and then the next day it's no good. The garlic is gross. It's geferlich. There's no fridge. The Geven can't fridge. You didn't take the mortar pestle and put it inside the ice box over there. So the garlic was something that you did not store. All you have from the Gemara is that, right after, that everyone agrees, right after you went and you ground up the garlic, so then what happened? So there, for the next 10 minutes or for the next half hour, it was inside, right? So then you're allowed to move it around while it's inside. What does that have to do with our shaila? Our shaila is a shaila of a pot that has cholent in the pot that you store in the pot for days. What does that have to do with the case of a grinder? Number one. Number two, do you know that you're not even allowed to keep garlic in the grinder overnight? Why? What happens if you keep garlic overnight? Once it was ground up and once it's shelled, what? It's a sakana. Your ears will fall off, your toes and everything. Well, everything. The toes fall off, the ears fall off. The Gemara Nida Daf Yud Zayin says that if you have garlic overnight and thus, that's the same exact Taisus over there in Be'er Daf Yud Gimel. So nobody kept garlic around. They ground up the garlic, they ate it and go too. So then there's no raya from over there. There's no raya. No raya. What? And I'll say even stronger. He says himself, Luyat sword that you would taka not have a raya. He says misvara makes sense. But we have a raya not like that. So now we have no raya like that. So we go back that misvara, it makes sense that merely storage, even though it's shevel taisa storage, it wasn't kuma say that I went and stored inside of it. But that's also a shimush, number one. Number two, you serve with it. That's a serve, you serve with it. That's number two. Now, if you're going to come to tell me I never serve with my pots, I never store my pots, we'll talk. Okay, every person, it's totally in them. This isn't a a gzeira on the tzibur. Each person is going to convey the muktzah in his house. I buy a hammer in order to crack nuts. For you, it's not muktzah. You buy a hammer for this. I buy a pot. The way I described, is there anybody in this room that fits into the way I described? He has a pot. He serves with it. He keeps it in his fridge with the food inside of it. Does anybody here do like that? Anybody here? Then for you, the pot is beyond the shadow of a doubt, not muktzah. It's not muktzah. You can move it bein l'tzarek, move it bein l'tzarek. Come on, bein l'chamel itself. Bein because you just don't like where it's placed. Sorry? Sorry? In other words, you ground it up right before Shabbos, just like left it there. Oh, that's for sure the case. It's for sure the case because anyways it can't be, right? Because you can't grind on Shabbos, right? Yeah, unless they did something weird to it, like they put inside oil or something, but that's a whole zach. Nobody's going to do it. You know what happens when you put oil inside your meducha? What Chody tell him? Tell him first what happens when you put oil inside a meducha. Oh, he told you. Okay, sorry. What? So yes? If you only use it for storage, if you only use it for storage, then the Orcha Shabbos would say that it's mutter, because he said, Orcha Shabbos said it's aser. Why? Because he said he has a raya from the Gemara. But now there's no more raya from the Gemara. So he said that misvara, it makes sense that storage is considered, a usage. Storage is considered a usage, right? So now that there's no raya from the Gemara, we go back to the svara. I'm not convinced about that. I'm not convinced. It's storage alone. I'm not convinced. I would have thought that I'm not convinced. I'm not sure. But you never serve it at all. But like let's say it's just you and your wife or something. What? No, let's say it's just you and your wife on a regular night of the week. Agav, how many nights of the week are there? How many nights? More nights of the week than Shabbos? I have a raya, yeah. You wanted the raya? I have a raya. It's a Gemara, Taka. It's a Gemara. No, it's really a Ramban on how we write Zachar Seima Shabbos L'Kadshay, being Zaycher Shabbos every day, which makes it that you Zaycher Shabbos more than even on Shabbos. So it's a raya that there's more days of the week than Shabbos. So now, how many days of the week do you serve out of the pot, Rabbi Chody, in public now? Huh? 6 of the days, right? Nah, come on. I won't tell anyone. 6 days? Yeah. What? In Radenshtetl, it wasn't. My chicken soup pot, the big one, right? I never bring to the table and serve chicken soup out of it, right? The frying pan, I never eat out of the frying pan. In a bucket deer, they eat out of a frying pan or no? No, even in a bucket deer, right? Right? It's not no, right? No. What? What? Shagashuka. Huh? Okay, but I again, each thing by itself won't be enough for me. It's the whole package deal. No, I'm saying you definitely don't store it in there. I need the whole package deal. Sorry? Yeah, I'm saying, but I need the package deal. I need that surah. Once I have that surah, then she's not muksa. L'chayra. This is what I would have said. Sorry? Come again? If pots would be made for storage, yeah. This is an interesting conversation, and I think you guys should have it, Taka. But let's finish up. But what? Sorry. That could be. Rabbi Stender, I'm not afraid of you. Rabbi Stender says, wait. I'm a note. We know what goes on with you now, okay? Proper etiquette, yeah? Yeah, he eats. He's the cereal in the morning out of a pot, fragments, right? With a ladle and a pot. I didn't want to say it in front of public. We know God's fine. Rabbi Stender, I'm not afraid of you. Rabbi Stender says, I have one pot that I do this. I have one pot like that. Could be. God's fine, could be. What? Each pot you're going to have to done. If you have a pot that I'll give you an example. A pot can change over the course of one's lifetime, right? What happens? And the person has to be able to deal with these things. What happens if he has a pot that all of a sudden that pot is there a reason why we stop putting a pot in the fridge or what? No, it's like, right. Sometimes you have a pot that it's like the bottom's like a little bit maybe icky or I don't know, right? No, I'm sure you have this over there by you, right? You have like the pot becomes a little bit icky and zachen, right? So then you don't want to put it in the fridge. You don't want to put it on you don't want to bring it to the table. Rabbi said, you don't want to bring it in the fridge. You don't want to put it on the table. etc., right? So then B'kai Govna, then the pot changed. The pot changed, and then she turns into a Kli Shemalach Al Yisr. Its function is just to do Isser. Right? The fact that I bought it for that reason doesn't matter. You have to, in life, be able to change with the tide. That's it. That's what you have to do. Right? Yeah, sorry? For sure, each person, we're going to look. Yeah. Now, when you get married, you got to work it out with your wife, right? Because otherwise it could cause shalom bayis problems. But Vada, she's kaveya, how she uses that. Actually, if let's say in your house, she always says, don't serve, you always serve, or whatever. You have to figure out what's going on with the pot. This pot is going to be, you have to bring the pot to therapy. You have to figure out what exactly is going on. What? Right. Right. I agree with that. I agree. But again, Rabbi Spire says, I'll tell you pshat, why you have to be machmer in a pot. He says, a pot is like, you will only buy a pot if it can cook, right? You'll never, ever buy a pot if it's only going to be able to store things. And you'll never in a million years buy a pot if it's only going to be able to serve and whatever and things like that. Okay, here, I don't know if that's the kaveya. I give an example. Glassware. Wait, slow. Glassware like Pyrex and these things, right? Let's say you have an oven that the glassware doesn't work on your oven, on your glassware or whatever, and then you won't be able to cook with it. Right? 99% of the population won't buy the glassware. Right? They'll buy something else to serve with. Why would I buy that one? I'll buy a different one. Right? I don't know if that's the only kaveya. That's why it's a praba. Praba is a siman that we're using just to help us. It's my nish zogin that's everything is totally kokule on the praba. But if you have something which, again, if you have something which is beyond the shadow of a doubt, a major function of it, and it's something that the person cheshbons out when he buys. We'll say it like that. He'll cheshbon it out. He'll say, I'd rather buy those pots. They're nicer pots. Why do you want a nicer pot? Why do you want a nicer pot? It's more geschmack. Why? What? So my wife said like this. Said she'll buy a pot which is nicer, nicer, even though it might not have this and this mila. What'll be the mila like? I'm not so into cooking, so mila, I don't know what she means. But what? Let's say it'll be harder to, let's say a little bit more non-stick, but it's nicer and she'll be able to serve with it, whatever. Let's say like that, right? She'll make it, she's also English, right? She said, that's how you have to figure out if the person, I'm not sure if that's, if you have somebody who says, no, I don't care how it looks. Maybe. If you have somebody who says, I don't care how it looks, right? It's mamish gefährlich, right? But the maisa, it's non-stick and it's this and it's that and it's all these things, right? But today they're making the pots in a way where they look nice and they want them to be able, it could be as we progress, all pots will soon turn into Pyrex musagim. All pots turn into that musig of being able to serve and being able to store. What? I understand. Okay. Let's go weiter. Now, okay. You got the lid. Yeah. If all you use your scissors for is for paper, hair, whatever, these things, so then versteht sich, that's a Kli Shemalach Al Yisr, only tzarich gufa mekayma, 100%. Now, a lid. What's the din of a lid of a pot? What do you think? The lid of a pot is obviously, what's the ikar function of the lid? What? See, the lid is an interesting thing, because the lid, you have my storage svara. You definitely use it to store, right? Keeps it, you store it with the lid, right? You cook with the lid. So it does cooking. It does storing. The other thing is, you don't serve with the lid. It's interesting. I was thinking like this. What? You'll bring it to the table with the lid. Yeah, but I'm not sure what that is exactly. Right? So no, it's interesting. I saw Rav Nissen. Rabbi said, I saw that Rav Nissen. I saw that Rav Nissen in the 91st page. He said, even when the lid is off, it's still, it's interesting. He's talking there. It's difficult. I'm stealing from Reb Nissen a little bit. Reb Nissen argues. Reb Nissen holds that a pot is a Kli Shemach Yisr. He holds the pots of Kli Shemach Yisr. He doesn't get involved in what we spoke about. He says it's a Kli Shemach Yisr. The Ikar purpose is to cook. Okay, maybe like Rabbi Spirus, it's something like that. Okay. But then I'm stealing something from Reb Nissen because he goes on to say, what happens when there's food in the pot, obviously? So then you're allowed to move the pot around, whatever you want. If you're nervous that I'm wrong, right, which I don't see why you have to be nervous, but if you're nervous, so then as long as there's food in the pot, there's nothing discussed, even if there's a little bit of food in there, a tiny bit of food. So then you can move it around. Yeah, as long as there's food in the pot, which is edible. Well, could you put, okay, let's get to that halacha. So Rav Nissen is talking about that halacha, that when there's food in the pot, when there's food inside the pot, so then he says that the lid, so then you're allowed to move it around. He said the lid, even when the lid is not covering the food, the lid is now considered bottle to the pot, and you can move the lid, even though the lid is not touching food. Because Zman that there's food in the pot, interesting this far. I like this far. Zman that there's food inside the pot, so then the pot, the food is bottled, the pot is bottled to the food. And then you can move it wherever you want. He says a lid is always just, a tuffle. It's a chelik of the pot. It's all tuffle to the pot. It's very negaya, but because no, mamish is negaya. Every time, you know how it is. You take off a lid from your cholent pot, and then you take out the cholent, right? Let's say it's on Friday night. You take it out, and the lid is down there by yourself on the side there, right? Okay, so if you need the muckim, you're allowed to move it, right? But sometimes, you're not even thinking, you just move the lid and whatever. We'll talk about all these things, but you just like move it. So Rav Nissen will tell you, you're allowed to. Right now, it's not holding any food. Yeah, but it's tuffle to the pot, which is tuffle to the food. And so I want to steal that svara. I'm just going to steal that svara for a minute. At kama, that you consider the pot to not be muktzah b'chlal, and you consider it to be a klishim lachtal yater, so then the lid is tuffle to that type of a concept. The lid is all a part of that. The lid is also going to be butter. It sounds to me like a mistaber, like a mistaber to kachiddish. L'chayra, l'chayra shaymin lahakal. L'chayra. Sorry. 100%. That's what he say. Of course. Yeah. You have a harder time understanding the pot as the food gets emptied out of the pot. Once the food is out of the pot, now that pot turned muktzah. Yes, why not? What? What's the difference? If you learn that a lid is tuffle to the pot. No, the truth is it's a very mistabritic thing. It's very mistabritic azach. I guess the word is kol zman that there's food inside the pot. So then the pshat is there's the potential that the person is going to still be using the lid. So it's just a moment. It's tuffle to the purpose. Same svara that I'm saying. I come that the pot is not muksa, it's a klishim ma'akel b'yeser. So then it's all serving that function. We look at a pot as something which serves the same function of a davar heter and a davar isser l'chayr. Now, based on this, what happened today? What? Okay, sorry. Danny, we can go for 5 more minutes, 8 more minutes. Where you got there, Danny? We started late. Doesn't my contract say that if we start late, we can go late? Danny's not answering. That means we're okay. So based on this, let's talk some cases here, okay? So first of all, like this. When you have something like a Swiss Army knife, the Swiss Army knife have it dvar mutarim and dvar masurim? I would imagine, right? What does it have in it? It has a knife. Bottle opener. What kind of bottle? Oh, like a corkscrew, which is a corkscrew is a davar mutter, okay? A beer cap is a davar mutter. What davar masurim in there? Screwdrivers, shaver. What else do you say? A scissor. Okay, yeah. Wow. Okay. Everybody seems to have one. Okay. Good. So that's dvar mutarim and dvar masurim. Right? By me, no. Manoimer, manataber. I don't know. Rabbi say, this is a good example of Mishra. You're going to look at 51%. You're going to say, well, 67% of the items here are dvar masurim. So therefore, you're going to say it's usher. I think this goes into the Mishnah Berurah. I mean, here it has things that are mutter in it, things that are usher in it. Just a moment. It has things that are mutter and things that are usher. How could you say it's mekatza daitim in it? How could you say it's a kli shemalach l'yezer? Because there's one part of this kli, the corkscrew, which is 1,000% mutter, meaning it's 1,000% the kli shemalach l'yezer. So what are you going to do? You can start figuring out how many chelkei isser are here, or you're going to figure out, well, most of the time I use this for a corkscrew and whatever. By me, I don't hear it so well. I don't hear it. By me, it's pashut that this is a klishim lachta, the heter and isser. It's meyuchad for this, it's meyuchad for that, it's meyuchad for both. So then if it's meyuchad for both, those are easy cases, I would say. Well, just give me a moment. Let's hold up my questions because I need to get through a certain amount of the and Mr. Shem, I'll answer afterward, but if I don't give them a shalom, then it doesn't come out clear to you say. but I'm asking, there's a lot to talk about here, there's a lot to think about here. But I wanted to talk about two cases now. One case is a cell phone. Now, I'm not talking about a smartphone, not just because religiously, I can't talk about a smartphone, but because a smartphone, b'derech klal, is probably a muksa machmas chasar and kiss. Because, if I was a real Rabbi, I would say, okay, Moksa Machmas Miyas, but it's Moksa Machmas or it's Avodah Zarah or whatever. But, the Maisa, it's a Chasarin case because a smartphone is something that he's careful with. He even has a special case. We'll talk about Chasarin case and we'll get back to her. I don't want to go into it right now and we'll get back to the smartphone. Right now, I'm talking about my very, very extremely dumb phone. My phone, which is dumb. I'm not so careful with it. We'll say, what the Gedar Marchasar in case we do have to talk about and whatever. But let's say I have a phone that you're not careful with. And let's assume that she's a Klisha Malachta Isser, right? She's something that you do Isser with to make the phone calls Isser and whatever, and to talk Lashon Hara Isser. Whatever. So it's a Klisha Malachta Isser. And therefore, it's only mutter tzarkuf mekar. Okay, I saw in the Rosh Hashanah, he says a cell phone. He's not talking about a smartphone over there. That's safe. He's talking about a smartphone, right? He's talking about a cell phone, and he says a cell phone is you're not allowed to move. He said there's a new zera uvdin dechayil. And uvdin dechayil, they made a new zera on a cell phone that you're never allowed to use it because it's so vachtik a phone. It's something that you use always during the week and whatever. And Mamela, it's so vachtik, it's so favachtik, like the Rabbi, I have a bit of a headache today, so maybe that's why I'm not able to answer the questions as much as just let me get till the end of the shir, and then I'll answer questions. Rabbi say, there's a Chazanish that talks about an umbrella. In their time, an umbrella was mamish a big problem. I think they say Rabbi Lazar Moshe. I think it was Rabbi Lazar Moshe Horowitz in the back of the Gemara. I think he had a daughter who was a big goyin. She's a big goyin, and she had all chidushim, and she used to build pulim and whatever. But she was like interesting, and she was a little bit weird, and that's why nobody in Volozhin wanted to marry her. She had all types of shitas and weird things. And she came out one day. She told her father it's mutter to carry an umbrella. You're allowed to carry an umbrella on Shabbos. She made all types of cheshbonis, and she came out with it. And she went and she carried on Shabbos, and he clapped on the bima in the shul and said nobody could touch the wine that she touches, and whatever. Like the old geshmak of Vilna politics. But but there was a big problem of umbrellas in those days. And the Chazanish said an umbrella is an uvdin dechol. You're not allowed to move an umbrella. Okay, my said umbrella, even an umbrella, it's not really true. You're allowed to move it. It's a klishah machtal yeser, and you're allowed to move it l'tzarek gufim makayma. But he means in uvdin dechol that even though mitzad hilchos oil, technically, it should be mutter to open and close an umbrella on Shabbos. And if there be an Erev, technically, you'd be allowed to open, close it, and walk around. We'll learn oil and Yetz Hashem. Nobody should do this. So I'm going to have to clap on the bima, right? But the Chazanish said, you can't open and close an umbrella. Uvdin d'chayil. There's some things we can't have. So the Rosh Hashanah says that's the same thing on a cell phone. Same thing. You can't move around the cell phone on Shabbos. You can't move. That means like the alarm is going off on your cell phone, and you won't be able to move it because it's ruining the makom. That's what he says, right? It's ein koyach for the sefer to do such a thing. There's no koyach to do that. No koyach. If I had to say what's the most example of a choldika thing, I would say a hammer. A hammer is such a choldika thing and a vachdika thing. And Afal it's allowed to move with Tzarech Gufa and Tzarech Mekayma. So therefore, a cell phone is no different. A cell phone, clearly, there's no koyach. I'm not saying there are Rabbanim and Tzadikim and Gedolei Ador. If they would get up, all the Gedolei Ador, and they would say that, a cell phone is an uvdin d'chayil, and they would do it. So then the Rabbeinu Yain and Shar Tshuva in Siman Kuf Samach he talks about how if the Gedolim of the door make it takana, so then it's what to talk about. But one sefer makes it takana where you can't. There's no such thing. No such thing. So therefore, our cell phone is a good example of a klisha malachtai le'isr. The only thing is, which means like this. So the alarm is going off on Shabbos. The alarm is going off. And on Shabbos, you sleep a little later, like it's going off at 7:05, and right, and it's ringing, ding, 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 right? So now your wife is going to wake up, right? Or she says, my husband's going to wake up, right? So now I'm assuming that the bars don't move and whatever, all these things, whatever. I'm not getting into electricity now. Assuming that the bars don't move and all those things, right? And you'll be allowed to pick it up, and you'll be allowed to take it, and you'll be allowed to put it into some other room and cover it with clothing or whatever. Why? Because it's a tzarich makim. Why? We'll learn this in Mitzvah. Because this makim was being ruined. The whole entire room was being ruined. Nobody could sleep here in this room. It was making this terrible noise. That's a chiddush in the application of tzarich mekayman. And in Mitzvah we'll talk about it. But that's what you would have said. Right? Then I was thinking, wait a minute. Or what we said today, maybe not only is there no uvdin dechayil, and he says you can't move it, not tzarich mekayman. Okay, not that. And not only could you move it tzarich mekayman, maybe you could stop moving around the cell phone on Shabbos. Why? Who says a cell phone is a klisha malachta l'isser? Why is it a klisha malachta l'isser? Maybe it's a klisha malachta l'isser v'heter. Does your cell phone have a watch? A clock? Does it have a clock? Me? What? So that clock also works on electricity. They all work on electricity. My watch works also on electricity. What? So mice like this. It's not practical what I'm saying, and therefore, it by default, it's going to come out of Klisha Machli. I really want to talk mitzad the London Shabbai. The Maisa. In the end of the day, the only way to see that clock, because it goes off all the time, is you have to press the button, right? Yeah, not all phones, right? But, yeah. So let's not on the side. I'm not interested in the application. And my phone is beyond the shadow of a doubt. It's a Klisha Machli Yisr, because the only way for me to use my clock is by pressing a button. So therefore, she's a Klisha Machli Yisr. I'm only allowed to move her the tzarech mekayman. But let's say you have a phone which the light stays on the whole time. You could have such a thing, right? You have a phone, the light stays on the whole time. So now, and how often do I use it for the clock? Some people, that's what they do. That's their watch. Right? Some people, even though they have a watch, I don't know why, right? But I know when I have my phone, I don't look, because in order for me to get my watch, I have to push it's a whole London, right? The watch is over here like this. You have to go like this, then you have to go like that, and it's 20 minutes fast. Right? Mashain came, when I look on my phone, it's the right time. It just tells me straight. There's no shtick, no games, right? So go on, I'll get gleicht and gring and glatt, say git. And so beside, I look on the phone. That's how it goes. I can't explain. I don't have to tell you why I look at. That's what I do. Okay, do what you want from me. That's what I do. Anyways, why am I telling you all this? Because so maybe again, you're all right. By default, my phone she's a klisha malachta l'yisr, because I have to press a button. But it's one of so now when I buy a phone. Okay, here Rabbi Spira for sure is not going to accept this. When I buy a phone, what's the reason why I buy a phone? I buy a phone, right? Why do I buy a phone? For a clock, for a clock, for a watch, doesn't mishiga. It's true, it also has that function, Come get? Yeah, so that prabha, I'm not sure if I wouldn't. And when the let's put it like this, I'll say it stronger, when the watch part breaks, right? No, right? When the watch part breaks, no. If the phone part breaks, you'll say, well, I got to watch. Maybe that's the problem. It's complicated to figure out what's the exact. Use your phone mostly for a watch. Tire yeshiva bacher. What? So they use it just as a watch. Okay, so fine. Could be. What? No, he's saying that there's English bacher, that they bring their phone all the way from England and it doesn't even work. So why do they bring it just for the what? Maybe it's also maybe there's games in there, like that snake. I'm talking about, that he keeps on getting more parts to his body and as he picks up different zachen and whatever. Maybe that's why they bring the phone. It's not right. That's not right. Right? No, so you have to think about this. You have to think about this. So what happened today? We did nothing today. What happened today? I don't understand this. I got this. Okay, I'm going to go. We're going to stop. We're going to stop here. But let me just tell you, I saw one thing. I don't know what happened. Nothing today. Okay. Let me just tell you one thing. In the Orlet Zion, what happened today? In Beis Chavav, he says, he takes the svaras that we said today and he go, mamish, this far I don't know. He says an oven An oven, she's a klisha malachtai leheter. An oven is a klisha malachtai leheter. No, the nafkamina is sometimes you take out the food, right? And now you want to close the oven door. And you don't really need the makim. You just want to close the door because you don't want it open or whatever. He says, no problem. You can open the door. You can close the door, right? No problem. You can use it whatever you want. Why? Why would it be a klisha malachtai leheter? Why? You have to learn to think a little out of the box. No, why? Well, he says that, but is that the? He says people that leave inside the oven, I don't know. The only thing I know is that every once in a while I hear my wife say, "Oh no, I left it in the oven," and then you see a smell, and then then we have to bring out Jude to bring out, every once in a while. I don't know. People leave in the oven. They're like bedafka leave it like it's a normal thing. What? No, I don't mean leave pot. He means like cake, I think, and things like that. The Kallus and whatever. Oh, you mean the guy doesn't have a fridge? What? It's a normal thing? Unbelievable. Rabbi Chodi doesn't bring pots to the table, right? But he leaves food inside the oven. Do you own a fridge? Do you own a fridge? No wonder he doesn't bring the pots to the table. They're stored in the oven. What? No, but here for sure, but you should be screaming already. This much even I'll agree, that's already really pushing it, That's pushing it. You don't have the svara that you serve with the oven. You don't have the svara. What? So they'll leave it. Mama's use it as a cabinet.
They're not getting cookies in there.
They'll leave things in there. You know when the guy has to say, yeah, my neighbor does it. You know what I mean? I don't talk lashon hara. My neighbors, they're geferlich. But I don't know. To me, I don't hear this. This I mamish don't hear. To say that's a klisha malachta leheter. Das herich, das ist taka klisha malachta leisser. As I meinach, das a klisha malachta leisser. What the ikar function of buying an oven? No one buys an oven with any half a mina cheshbon. Is it going to be good to store things? That's a big pella. Okay, you now have the kalim to continue to try and figure these things out. And whoever doesn't still have a chavrusa, please come to me. I'm sorry we had the whole issue.